It all started, as many nightmares do, on a perfectly ordinary Tuesday. One moment I was hunched over my desk, staring at a spreadsheet that seemed determined to multiply its errors, and the next, the world decided to do a rather convincing impression of a broken kaleidoscope. The lights in the office, usually a dull, persistent hum, suddenly flared into blinding suns, then plunged into an inky blackness that swallowed everything. My head spun, a violent centrifuge of pain and confusion, and then nothing. Absolute, terrifying nothingness. When I came to, I was lying on the cold linoleum floor, a small crowd of blurry faces peering down at me like concerned, distorted angels. The sound of an ambulance siren, far off at first, grew steadily louder, a wailing herald of impending drama. And drama, oh boy, was there drama. The doctors called my parents. They never came. Instead, my sister tagged in. Can you even imagine that? Being in a hospital bed, weak, confused, and utterly terrified, and finding out the people who brought you into this world couldn't even be bothered to show up. Tell me honestly, would you have been as devastated as I was, or would you have seen it coming? Let me take you back, way back, to understand the intricate tapestry of dysfunction that led to that moment. My name is Alex, and I'm 28 years old. My sister, Sarah, is 32. Growing up, our house was less a home and more a meticulously maintained museum of parental expectations, where every achievement was met with a nod, never a hug, and every failure with a sigh that could deflate a hot air balloon. My parents, Mark and Susan, were and still are paragons of polite indifference. They were never overtly cruel, never physically abusive, but their emotional absence was a gaping void that swallowed warmth, laughter, and any genuine connection. It was a subtle, insidious form of neglect, woven into the very fabric of our lives. They provided for us financially, ensuring we had good schools, nice clothes, and extracurriculars, but they never saw us. Not really. I remember vividly, one time in high school, I won a statewide writing competition. I was ecstatic. I burst through the door, clutching the certificate like it was solid gold, practically vibrating with pride. My mom was in the kitchen, meticulously chopping vegetables for dinner. I showed her, my voice a little too high with excitement. She glanced at it, nodded, and said, "That's nice, dear. Don't forget to take out the trash." My dad, when he got home, barely looked up from his newspaper. "Good," he grunted, and that was that. Sarah, however, was different. She saw me. She was always the one to offer a genuinely enthusiastic congratulations, or a comforting hug when I inevitably crumbled under the weight of parental apathy. She was my rock, my confidant, my silent co-conspirator in navigating the emotional minefield of our childhood. She was the one who taught me to tie my shoes, helped me with my impossible math homework, and snuck me extra cookies when Mom wasn't looking. She was the older sister who instinctively took on the role of the parent our actual parents refused to be. The dynamic only intensified as we grew older. While my parents poured all their energy into cultivating an image of the perfect, respectable family to the outside world active in community events, impeccably dressed, always saying the right things, their internal world was a barren wasteland. They were obsessed with appearances, with what the neighbors thought, with maintaining a veneer of success. My academic achievements were meticulously documented and subtly boasted about at dinner parties. My first real job was discussed with a detached pride, almost as if I were a particularly well-behaved show dog. But when it came to actual emotional support, to being present for the difficult moments, they were nowhere to be found. Sarah, on the other hand, rebelled in her own quiet way. She went to an art school they disapproved of, chose a career in graphic design that they deemed unstable, and embraced a vibrant, slightly unconventional lifestyle that horrified them. This, of course, made her the black sheep, the one who didn't live up to her potential. But to me, she was a beacon of authenticity, a testament to the idea that you could be yourself, even if it meant disappointing the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally. Our relationship deepened, forged in the fires of shared neglect and unspoken understanding. We communicated in shorthand, a glance or a subtle shift in tone conveying volumes that our parents would never comprehend. We built a parallel universe of affection and support, a secret garden where we could be vulnerable and truly ourselves. This was especially true after I moved out for college, and then again after I started my first proper job. The distance didn't weaken our bond. If anything, it solidified it. Sarah was the first person I called when I got a promotion, the first person I called when a relationship ended, the first person I called when I just needed to vent about a particularly annoying colleague. Our parents, meanwhile, would receive sporadic, stilted phone calls, always ending with the same perfunctory questions about our well-being and a swift exit from the conversation. So, when I woke up in that hospital bed, disoriented and in pain, my first coherent thought after the initial panic was of Sarah. My phone, thankfully, was still in my pocket, and with shaky fingers I managed to text her. She replied almost instantly, her usual quick wit replaced with a torrent of concerned messages. My colleagues, bless their hearts, had already alerted the hospital that my emergency contact information listed my parents. The nurse, a kind woman with tired eyes, had tried calling them, and tried again. They didn't pick up, sweetie. She'd said, her voice laced with a sympathy that felt like a punch to the gut. I left a message. They'll probably call back soon. They didn't. Hours passed. The initial flurry of medical assessments slowed. The doctors, a polite but firm bunch, explained that I had experienced a severe vasovagal syncope, essentially a fancy medical term for fainting due to an overreaction of the nervous system, likely triggered by stress, dehydration, and a general lack of sleep. They wanted to keep me overnight for observation, just to be safe. That's when Sarah burst in, a whirlwind of vibrant energy and barely contained fury. Her hair was a little disheveled, her clothes practical but stylish, and her eyes, usually sparkling with mischief, were narrowed with concern. "Alex," she exclaimed, rushing to my side and enveloping me in a hug that felt like coming home. "What in the world happened? Are you okay? I just got your text. I dropped everything." The nurse, witnessing this heartfelt reunion, finally spoke up, a touch of bewilderment in her voice. "Your sister is here, dear. We tried your parents, but we couldn't reach them." Sarah's jaw tightened. "Of course you couldn't," she muttered under her breath, but loud enough for me to hear. She turned to the nurse, her voice calm but firm. "I'm her next of kin. What do I need to do? What's going on?" From that moment on, Sarah became my tireless advocate. She listened to the doctors, asked intelligent questions, ensured I was comfortable, and even brought me a ridiculously oversized teddy bear from the hospital gift shop, just to make me smile. She made calls, handled paperwork, and generally took charge, all while keeping a steady stream of reassuring banter flowing. It was exactly what I needed. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. I was lying there, witnessing my sister, once again, step into the void left by our parents. The anger, the frustration, the deep, aching disappointment had been simmering for years, but this felt like the undeniable climax. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have confronted them, cut them off, or just accepted it as another painful truth about who they are? The next morning, after I was cleared to go home, Sarah drove me back to my apartment. I was still weak, still a little shaky, but the emotional clarity I gained in that hospital bed was startlingly sharp. My parents still hadn't called. Not a text, not a voicemail, nothing. It was as if I had simply ceased to exist for them. Sarah, seeing the storm brewing in my eyes, just squeezed my hand. "Are you going to talk to them?" she asked softly. I took a deep breath. "I have to. I said, my voice barely a whisper. I can't just let this go. Sarah nodded, understanding. Good, because I'm right there with you. We decided to go to their house that evening. I wanted to do it in person, to see their faces, to gauge their reaction. It felt important, a final test of their humanity. The drive was tense, filled with a silence that spoke volumes. When we arrived, their perfectly manicured lawn and pristine house seemed to mock the turmoil within me. We walked up the path, and Sarah, ever protective, gently pushed the doorbell before I could falter. My mom answered, a surprised, almost annoyed look on her face. Alex, Sarah, what a surprise. Is everything all right? Her eyes, however, flitted past me, past Sarah, to the car, assessing for any potential disruption to her perfectly ordered evening. My dad appeared behind her, holding a glass of scotch, his expression a familiar mask of polite disinterest. Everything's fine, Mom, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. I just wanted to ask you something. We sat in the living room, a space so immaculately furnished it felt less like a place to live and more like a museum exhibit. Sarah sat beside me, a silent, unwavering presence. I was in the hospital yesterday. I began, my voice clear. My mom blinked. Oh, are you all right? My dad took a sip of his scotch. Nothing serious, I hope. The casualness, the utter lack of genuine concern, was breathtaking. I collapsed at work. I continued watching their faces. The doctors called you. They left messages. You never came. There was a beat of silence, thick and suffocating. My mom fiddled with a cushion. My dad cleared his throat. Oh, that, my mom said finally, a faint flush creeping up her neck. Yes, we got a call. We were rather busy yesterday, dear. Had a dinner engagement, you know. And then we thought, well, if it was serious, they'd call again, wouldn't they? My blood ran cold. Busy. A dinner engagement was more important than their child being in the hospital. My dad, ever the pragmatist, chimed in. And honestly, Alex, you're a grown woman. We trust you to handle your own affairs. We assumed it wasn't life threatening, otherwise they would have been more insistent. Sarah, who had been remarkably quiet until now, finally spoke, her voice low and dangerous. Insistent? You think they should have been more insistent for you to show up for your own daughter, who collapsed and ended up in the emergency room. My dad bristled. Sarah, there's no need for that tone. We simply made a judgment call. A judgment call. I repeated, my voice rising. A judgment call that meant you didn't even bother to check if I was okay. Not a call, not a text, nothing. My mom tried to interject. Now, Alex, don't be dramatic. We're here now, aren't we? You're fine. Am I? I asked, looking directly at her, tears finally pricking at my eyes. Am I fine, Mom? Because it felt pretty bad yesterday. It felt like no one cared. The conversation devolved from there. It wasn't a shouting match, not exactly. It was worse. It was a calm, almost clinical unraveling of decades of emotional neglect. They defended themselves with a practiced ease, deflecting blame, minimizing my feelings, and even trying to turn it back on me for making a fuss. My mom even implied that I was being manipulative, trying to guilt-trip them. Sarah, however, held her ground. She systematically dismantled their arguments, pointing out every instance of their emotional absence, every time they prioritized appearances over genuine connection. It was a raw, brutal truth, telling, and through it all, my parents remained stubbornly, infuriatingly unrepentant. They simply didn't see it. They truly believed they had been good parents, that providing financially was enough. Finally, exhausted and heartbroken, I stood up. I'm done. I said, my voice trembling, I'm done trying to make you care. I'm done expecting anything from you. My mom looked genuinely surprised, a flicker of something resembling hurt in her eyes, quickly replaced by indignation. My dad just sighed, as if I was being an unreasonable child. Sarah stood up with me, her arm linking through mine. "Come on, Alex," she said softly. "Let's go." As we walked out, I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that this was it. The final break. I didn't look back. The aftermath was exactly what you'd expect. My parents sent a few perfunctory texts in the following days, trying to smooth things over, but I didn't reply. They tried to call, but I let it go to voicemail. I needed space, needed to heal from this final, devastating confirmation of their emotional unavailability. Sarah, true to form, was my unwavering support system. She visited frequently, brought me home, cooked meals, and just listened without judgment. We spent hours talking, replaying our childhood, finally acknowledging the depth of the emotional wounds we both carried. It was cathartic, painful, and ultimately liberating. The silence from my parents was deafening at first, but slowly it began to feel peaceful. It was a silence free from expectation, free from the constant striving for their approval that I had carried for so long. I realized that the hardest part wasn't their absence, but my persistent hope that they would one day be different. That hope, finally extinguished, left a quiet kind of freedom in its wake. My relationship with Sarah, already strong, deepened even further. We became more than sisters. We became each other's chosen family, a sanctuary of unconditional love and acceptance. We created our own traditions, celebrated each other's successes, and supported each other through every challenge. While I grieve the parents I never had, I am profoundly grateful for the sister who showed up, who consistently chose me, and who, when the world decided to knock me down, tagged in and saved me. It was a painful lesson, but it taught me who my real family truly is. So, that's my story. It's a messy, complicated tale of family, disappointment, and ultimately, finding strength in unexpected places. I'm still figuring things out, still healing, but I'm doing it with the people who genuinely care about me. Like this video if you were on my side and understood the impossible position I was in. Subscribe for more stories like this, where I share the raw, unfiltered truth of my life and the crazy situations I've found myself in. And please share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. What would you have done differently? Have you ever had to cut ties with family who just couldn't show up for you? I'll see you all in the next story.